Have you ever heard someone say, "Man, I never saw it coming"? You know exactly what I mean. A quiet, polite coworker suddenly does something incredibly destructive. A friend who never complains just snaps. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're totally dismantling the comforting assumption that criminals are just born evil. Instead, we're going to look at something way more unsettling: why perfectly ordinary and sometimes even the nicest people can become incredibly dangerous without absolutely any warning.
So let's dive right in with a pretty tough question. One that blurs that thick, comfortable line we love to draw between us and them. It's super easy to sit back and assume that people who break the rules are just wired differently, right? We desperately want to believe evil is just a trait you're born with, because that keeps the threat safely away from our own lives. But are they really a totally different species? Or are they just ordinary people? Maybe even the people pleasers among us, placed under the exact wrong kind of pressure? Here is our roadmap for unpacking all of this today. We'll start with the circumstance of crime, then move through the slippery slope, double standards of justice, the 5-minute mistake, and finally wrap up with the systemic threat.
Okay, let's get into section 1, the circumstance of crime, and how everyday people get pushed way past their breaking point.
We all love the myth of the born evil mastermind. I mean, it makes for fantastic movies, but the reality is a lot messier. Crime is usually this chaotic mix of intense external factors. It's super rare for someone to just wake up and decide to be a villain. Often, it's about polite, agreeable people silently carrying an immense amount of pressure until the dam finally breaks.
And what does that pressure actually look like? Well, we're talking extreme financial ruin, heavy debt, deep humiliation, or sheer desperation. Or honestly, sometimes it's just the sudden, intoxicating belief that they can cut a corner and not get caught. Under these conditions, people who are usually eager to please or terrified of disappointing others can be pushed into making life-altering choices. Their quietness isn't peace, you guys. It's a literal pressure cooker.
Which brings us nicely to section 2, the slippery slope, or how tiny, polite lies snowball into major fraud. Massive corporate fraud almost never starts with a dramatic Hollywood-style heist. It is a slow, insidious 4-step progression. Step 1 is usually just a tiny lie, maybe a nice person trying to cover up a mistake so they don't disappoint their boss. Step 2 escalates to fudging a signature to hit a quota. Then comes step 3, and this one is the killer, that internal whisper of, "Okay, just this once." Before they even realize it, they're at step 4, up to their necks in major fraud. Once you cross that first tiny boundary, the next one is practically invisible.
So how do these seemingly good people live with themselves while sliding down this slope? They rely heavily on some incredibly powerful rationalizations. They tell themselves stuff like, "Well, everyone does it," or "I literally had no choice, I was just trying to save my team." It's a psychological trick to soothe their conscience while doing something totally unacceptable. This brings us to a concept called moral self-justification, and wow, this is a rule breaker's absolute strongest weapon. Think of it as psychological armor. Before a nice person crosses a major line, they essentially play the victim. They convince themselves of their own innocence, building this whole narrative where they are actually the good guy just doing what had to be done. It makes doing the unthinkable feel completely reasonable.
Moving right along to section 3. Let's talk about the double standards of justice, societal hypocrisy, and the whole myth of deterrence. When we look at how society doles out justice, the hypocrisy is honestly staggering. If a poor person steals food out of desperation, society's judgment is swift and harsh. But what happens when an incredibly polite, well-dressed executive commits large-scale fraud? They're often quietly praised as savvy or smart for working the system. The truth is, some of the absolute most damaging crimes happen in well-lit corporate offices by the nicest guys in the room, not down dark alleyways. And when it comes to stopping these crimes, our gut instincts are basically wrong. We think handing out these brutal, heavy punishments is the magic fix. But criminologists know that harsh punishments rarely deter anyone if the offender thinks they can slide under the radar. People fear the absolute certainty of getting caught and the shame of having their nice person facade ruined, way more than they fear the actual prison sentence.
Let's shift gears to section 4, the 5-minute mistake. This is where sudden, unchecked emotion destroys a lifetime of good behavior.
This right here is exactly where the quiet, accommodating person suddenly becomes totally unrecognizable. It literally takes just 5 minutes for years of suppressed emotion to boil over. Minute 1, a sudden trigger, like deep humiliation or a breakup. By minute 3, Years of politely swallowed anger and resentment turn into blinding rage. And by minute 5, a violent act happens. They didn't just change overnight. This is the pressure cooker finally exploding.
And what happens after that 5-minute mistake? Society assumes that sending someone to prison means they'll automatically reform. We love that neat little narrative, but the systemic reality is tragic. Prison frequently acts as an intense, dark networking event. It doesn't rehabilitate, it teaches new, hardened criminal behaviors and slaps on a stigma that makes rejoining society almost impossible.
Which leads us perfectly into our final section, the systemic threat. Looking at crime as a massive, macro-level problem.
See, crime isn't just an individual flaw. It thrives in broken ecosystems. When you have widespread corruption, slow justice, high unemployment, deep social distrust, and weak enforcement, you are looking at the ultimate breeding ground. In these environments, playing nice actually means conforming to the corruption. Large-scale criminality just becomes the natural result of the environment. And this means we really need to completely redefine who we consider dangerous. A physical attack is terrifying, yes, but the damage is highly localized. Contrast that with a slick, incredibly polite scammer who abuses trust. That person can vaporize hundreds of families' life savings in an instant without ever raising their voice right from behind a sleek desk.
So, what is your takeaway here? How do you protect yourself against these hidden threats? You've got to stay aware. Your absolute best defense is to distrust excessive charm. It's often a mask. Judge people by their consistent patterns, not their polite words. Remember that 5-minute mistake and learn to walk away when your own anger flares up. And most importantly, never ever accept everyone does it as a valid reason to cross a boundary.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on. What is the true root of crime? Is it pure greed? Is it unchecked anger hiding behind a really nice smile? Or is it the systemic abuse of power? Because to truly understand why people break, we have to start by understanding ourselves. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, always question what you think you know.